Welcome to What is Going On for new thought from the edge of Om. Each week on OMTimes flagship radio show, veteran broadcaster, author, and media consultant Sandie Sedgbeer conducts thought-provoking interviews with inspirational authors, artists, musicians, scientists, speakers, and filmmakers who are working at the point where spirituality and science meet consciousness at the very edge of Om. Here is your host, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello. For millennia, indigenous peoples, shamans, and healers have harnessed the power, energies, and attributes of specific animals for healing, personal growth, and transformation. Working with power animals, it's said, can help us explore the mysteries of life and guide us to a higher level of consciousness from which we can learn more about ourselves and the world around us. Alyson Charles is a former national TV host turned healer, shaman, spiritual teacher, and author who lives by the calls of inner wisdom, mysticism, energy medicine, and shamanic practices that she's mastered through her studies with spiritual teachers, both of and beyond this world. She's delivered high-energy healing journeys for audiences larger than 15,000, working with brands like HBO and the New York Times. Alyson Charles joins me now to talk about her latest book, Animal Power, in which she shares the secrets of working with over 100 power animals and offers rituals, meditations, visualizations, energy medicine, and power practices to energize your life and awaken your soul. Alyson Charles, welcome.
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Sandie. It's so interesting this early in the morning to be feeling such deep swells of emotions, but I took a break from doing some interviews for a while, so now to be back, and I'm such a changed person. I feel like everyone, including myself, is evolving at such a rapid rate. So to hear that intro, it really hit me for some reason in a different texture, in a different way. So thank you for having me. So happy to be here.
You're so welcome. You know, the time we're living in now, we need all the help we can get. And if it's true that we each have a power animal as a guide, then we really should know about that and how to tap into them and let them help us. So tell me a little bit about your backstory first, because your story is described as one of moving from suffering to surrender to service. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yes, I always like to tune in to just truly be guided to whatever messages and transmissions want to be shared uniquely in each interview because, like all of us, I definitely have a unique journey, and it's a long trajectory, an interesting winding path is in terms of what got me to this place where I've authored this Animal Power book. But yes, previously I definitely was in some extreme states of anguish and despair and confusion, and really cutting myself off from and holding myself back from my true divine calling, my true spiritual abilities and gifts, and really the whole point as to why I'm here on Earth. And a lot of it was caused. There definitely was some childhood traumatic experiences. I wouldn't change a second of it because it was all by divine design. It all was in co-creation that led me to me having my eventual divine intervention and spiritual awakening. But I grew up being a very intense and elite athlete. I was a long distance runner, and my dad was my coach, and I started at a very, very young age. Before I was even 3 years old, I was running in my first road race. And so these concepts of competition and external validation and winning awards and feeling such immense pressure to be at the top at all times and to be the best really got ingrained on a cellular level, like I said, before I was even 3 years old. And, there were some great things I took away from that. I learned how to be a very powerful manifester. and I learned how to achieve incredibly ambitious goals. I was a 2-time national champion athlete, and I was an athlete at the University of Alabama, and I was a Division I college coach after I was an athlete, and all these beautiful things. But it also, like I said, ingrained in me ways of living that took many, many years of deconstruction that I had to put a lot of healing work into. And some of that wounding web of these concepts I'm describing ended up transferring in a unique way into a relationship that I got into starting when I was a college athlete. And that relationship that spanned nearly 2 decades with a former romantic partner, it was through that relationship that the denial, the suffering, the illusion, all of those concepts got so strong that it took that divine intervention and spiritual awakening to finally blast my egoic shell, lift that veil of illusion, and course correct me, wake me up to the truth of who I really am, the truth of why I'm here. And so that's kind of the tightest nutshell of explaining the story that I can get into. But I definitely experienced so much suffering in that romantic relationship. And one of the strongest takeaways that I had in terms of where I needed to take responsibility for the role I was playing in that was I was spending so much time and energy looking outward at my ex's issues, at my ex's addictions, at my ex's problems. And I was so focused on what he needed to do to heal that I was taking responsibility away from myself. And I wasn't looking at the places where I needed to heal and where I needed to grow and where I needed to take responsibility. So it took my guides coming in and dropping me to my knees and lifting that veil. And it was a very challenging time, but also, a very miraculous time that I'm so grateful for.
So what turned you on to power animals? Was it your study of shamanism?
They actually were the first spiritual guides who came in after I had that divine intervention and spiritual awakening. So once that traumatic moment woke me up, the next step that I took was flying to the area in Indiana where I grew up, and I was spending time at my grandmother's house. And in that very back bedroom of her home, for the next 2 weeks, I had additional awakenings. And that's also the place where I had my surrender moment and where I finally spoke my readiness to Great Spirit, my own soul, and Great Mother Earth, that I was ready to get out of my own way and I was ready to receive in the support of the unseen realms. And through that surrender statement and moment, of course, all of the guidance and messages that I had previously had the blinders on, the blinders were now down. So I was able to more clearly and consciously hear the messages and the guidance coming in. And I was shown that I needed to start to work with shamans, my aunt being one of them, and Sarah Bamford Seidelman, an MD turned shaman in Minnesota, was another one. And it was through my soul retrieval work with my aunt that the power animal guides came in to support me at this part of my journey. So my core power animal, the black jaguar, and 3 supporter power animals, the bear, the deer, and the frog, all came in for different purposes. And just to quickly share, in case some of the people joining us are newer to working with power animals, each one has different healing attributes, wisdom, teachings, and medicines meant to support us on our journey. So the black jaguar, who's with me every single moment of every day for my whole life, was deeply about, spiritual reclamation, me stepping into my true divine power, and also learning how to do shadow work, which is an integral part of any person walking the spiritual path. Then the bear came in to teach me how to really let go and surrender fully. It would come to me in meditations, and it would sit with its back up against a huge tree and invite me to sit in its lap and lean back and lean back more until I was fully letting go into the arms and medicine of the bear. So it really gave me this grounding, nurturing, deep support that I needed, because I felt really alone at this time and incredibly confused. My life got turned upside down. And then the deer, the path of the heart and heart medicine, the deer has been with me for more than a decade and actually played a huge role in me getting together with my now husband, Luke's story. And the deer taught me relentlessly to not shut down my heart, despite heartbreak and betrayal being the medicine that provided my spiritual awakening. The deer stayed by my side, like I said, for more than 10 years, urging me to not close my heart down, to keep the faith. And I'm so glad she did, because now I'm in an incredible relationship. And then the last example of the frog, going into those, oh gosh, I feel it is, even as I'm about to say, those deep emotional healing waters. So many cleansing baths with crystals and oils. And the frog taught me how to clear toxicity from my life. And also the really important task of taking a new leap of faith, and most importantly, a leap of faith forward, because frogs never leap backwards. And that was the main teaching for me, because in that previous relationship for almost 20 years, I kept going back to him, and I kept going back into that a cycle of dysfunction. And the frog was like, no more. This time we're only going forward.
When you are working with a power animal guide, do you find that animal actually appearing in reality around in your surroundings or your environment?
It's both. The animals, they're such generous, potent, yet kind and honoring guides. Those of us that are deep on the shamanic and spiritual path, we know there are infinite allies and supporters who we can learn to connect in with and work with. And they all have their own unique ways. I've had goddess Kali initiations, and when she shows up, at least for me and many people I know, there is no mistaking that Kali is there, and her fires come rip roaring in, and it can be a massive blast for a catalyst of change or realization. But the power animal guides, they really love an invitation in. Oftentimes they will sit on the sidelines and just be there waiting for you to speak your readiness to communicate with them. So I always recommend, if this is resonating, if leaning in and learning from power animals is speaking to your soul, the first step I recommend people do is to say out loud, ideally, sacred power animal realm, I feel your presence. I feel the readiness to connect with you, and I invite you in more fully into my life. And once you do that, they do have a tendency of showing up a lot in dreams, because there are a lot of guides, like my main one, for example, the black jaguar. I live in Texas. And yes, there are some mountain lions and there are some big cats in some of the regions here, but there really aren't black jaguars. So the way that the black jaguar primarily needs to show up for me is when I do shamanic journeying, in meditation, or in my dream time. But yes, another huge point that you brought in with your question is, it's vitally important, if there's an animal that's repeatedly crossing your path in real life. That's partially why I answered the call to write Animal Power book. It's because, okay, this animal's showing up for me. I need to have conscious awareness that it's presenting itself. This is a sacred relationship. I need to be consciously aware that it's doing this. And then the next step is the inquiry. Why is it showing up for me? So you can go to Animal Power book and look that animal up and see what its wisdom teachings are, or you can go on a shamanic journey and invite that animal in. So yes, they oftentimes do show up in real life.
I used to live in Arizona, and I used to have scorpions a lot in my place, which was very concerning. I had friends who lived nearby who never saw a scorpion, but many times they would have snakes in their yard. And I think more than once the snakes shed their skin and left it there for them. And we began to think that there was something really important for them with snakes.
Yes, well, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm wearing my snake romper today. I'm currently very, very present to snake medicine. So when I went into my closet this morning and saw this hanging up, I thought, oh, that is the perfect attire for today. Oh my goodness, snake medicine really comes in oftentimes at a pretty marked turning point in people's lives. It's a very initiatory, activating medicine. And like you said, snakes can oftentimes be most known for their ability to completely, from top to bottom shed their entire layer
Mhm.
of skin. So it's that teaching of a time of fully letting something go. No more clinging on to it, no more coming up against resistance. It's letting fully go. I pulled from my Animal Power card deck that will be out in August. I pulled from it this morning, and it's bringing me in this conversation with snake to the animal that I pulled, and that was the shark, and the teaching of flowing forward, but flowing forward in harmony with the energetics and current flow of universe. And somehow those are coming in together right now. It's like if you're experiencing an initiation, trust that you're fully equipped to ride the waves of it, even if it feels incredibly tumultuous or filled with really, really strong lessons. Trust that you're fully equipped to see it through. Trust you're fully equipped to hold the line forward. And this morning, right before I got on with you, I want to share it because it's coming in. It's literally a practice that can take 3 seconds, especially for those that are energy sensitive or deep on the path. If everyone, if you feel called to right now, if you feel in safe space to close your eyes and just start to get in attunement with the current and very present energetics, the current energy waves that the universe is showering with you now. So, with your eyes closed, just seeing if you can connect in with and feel the energetics, the waves that the universe wishes for you to feel and be at one with right now. And as you connect in with those, just feeling, is it an energy of just being so present? Is it an energetic current that's urging you gently to flow forward? What are the textures? What are the feelings of these current energetics? And really letting yourself click in with them right now and trust that you're at one with them, and invite those energies to be your guiding force for your pathway. But yeah, snake is a teacher of a time of rising consciousness and big initiations oftentimes in people's lives.
Would you say that snake is probably one of the best power animals to tap into as a collective? I mean, we're going through this enormous global turbulence on every single level. And I'm sure we all have our own individual, connections, but as a collective,
Mm.
what would help humanity through this time?
Yeah, that's a really beautiful question. There were a couple sides in the answer coming in. Ultimately, yes, I think it could be an incredibly supportive power animal guide for the collective, because a lot of people for the last couple of years and right now have been faced with fears that can feel really, really overwhelming. And oftentimes the snake brings that feeling in. In fact, the woman who did this henna on my hand a few days ago, I really feel that she would be fine with me sharing this, but the henna artist was talking to me specifically about snakes, and this was just 2 days ago. And she was saying that this snake in both real life, because she grew up in India, in both real life and in her dreams, has just been presenting ever since childhood. And yet she still is so fearful of it. And the message that came in my conversation with the henna artist, and the message that's coming in right now, is the same. It is an urging for us. So many people are at this threshold point where if you just finally let yourself lean in to facing the shadows, to facing some of these greatest fears, you are on the brink of your life's greatest transformation and entering into an entirely new world that you will be so grateful that you finally let yourself enter into. So yes, I think as the collective and as planet Earth has been going through this deep, shadowy, transformational process, I mean, we're all one and everything is interconnected. So as Earth is going through her own shadow release, so are we. And the snake is a big guide and teacher for that. And so if you don't already have Animal Power book and it's resonating, I would recommend getting it, because like you said in the intro, every single one of the 100 animals comes with what I call a power practice. And that felt so vital, because it's, people learn through a shamanic journey, what animals coming in, and then their question is always, then now what? What do I do next? And these power practices are rituals and guided meditations where you can learn how to open the gateways of communication with each animal more fully and learn how to connect with them more.
How do we find our own power animal? The one that's supposed to be our guide through life.
Yes. The most recommended way that I share is going on a guided shamanic journey with a trusted shaman, because the relationships with these power animals, and especially our core power animal, the one that's assigned to us since we incarnate and is with us every moment, our entire earth walk, because these relationships are so sacred, I really recommend like I said, a trusted, integrity-filled, embodied shaman, uniting with them, and whether it's working with the drum or a rattle, having them guide you specifically with the intention of going on this journey to have you meet, connect with, communicate with, and unite with your core power animal. And within that journey, you can ask the animal questions that you have. You can receive the energetic medicine that the animal wishes to provide for you. And it just really fully blasts open in a loving way your ability to have a daily relationship with the animal. There are other ways too. If you are someone who knows how to journey yourself, you can certainly do that. It's just setting the intention is the most important part. That the intention is clearly calling in specifically your core power animal. You can also do a journey where if you already know your core power animal, you can invite in the animal or animals who most want to support you with where you're currently at in your path. And also in just meditation, for those who have an easy access point to the unseen realms and to guides in the unseen realms, simply, I start my day at my altar and start with just a brief meditation. And I always, connect in and see which animal wants to present in that day. I mean, there's those online quizzes of, meet your power animal, or, through online quizzes, and those are cute and fun. But with such a sacred, reverent relationship, I recommend going on a true shamanic journey.
It's interesting because looking through your book, and it's beautifully illustrated. I mean, the images are the sort of thing you want to put on your wall. There's so many animals there. And of course, we all want, coyote and condor and dolphin and dragonfly and fox and eagle. The thought of calling in spider or tick or worm or skunk or praying mantis is a little bit, I imagine people have a lot of resistance to that. How do we get beyond our resistance?
This is one of my favorite portals to enter into. And it was a part of my journey in writing this book. I was so clear, like I've had one of my most reverent, life-changing experiences was with leeches. And I've also had powerful activations with tick, and spider happens to be the core totem for my relationship with my husband, Luke Story. And so I happen to have on my own personal journey a lot of incredibly deep and loving and respectful experiences with animals that, like you said, yes, the general population might, crinkle their nose to or have some resistance to, but that, like our last bit of our conversation, that exact point is oftentimes my most favorite point on the path, on the earth walk, and also in working with guides. It's like at that point where you feel triggered and at that point where you feel some resistance, that's the exact place that I invite you to stay. And I invite you to be present with those feelings, with that medicine that's coming in. And that's the exact place where if you can just stay with the discomfort, if you can just stay with the feelings that are arising that are uncomfortable, then you can learn to trust yourself to, in life, be with the full spectrum of emotions and experiences, which allows you to be at one with all that is, which is the most important piece of the big picture of the earth walk, and not be in resistance to and pushing away any teachings that are coming your way that might bring with them feelings of discomfort. And so I always invite you to ask, start to talk to those feelings and get behind it. The magic and the miracles are always right behind the precipice of the trigger, the precipice of the discomfort. So if you can sit with it and invite it more fully into your experience and start to ask yourself, what is behind this feeling of fear? And start to ask it questions. And the same thing with the animals. If there's one that you're feeling some resistance to, don't push yourself to, the brink of, a total meltdown, but there's a healthy threshold. And so if leech or spider is one of those for you, where you have been feeling resistance, I would invite you to have those animals be the next ones you focus on working and calling into your experience. And if you can learn how to talk with them and learn what their true essence is and love is in the other realms, in meditation, in shamanic journey, in real life, it will lessen the charge and it will be more fully integrated into your experience as well.
We're going to take a short break now, Alyson. You're listening to What Is Going On. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and my guest today is author, shaman, healer, and spiritual teacher Alyson Charles. And we're talking about how connecting with the energies and attributes of power animals can help you heal your body, energize your life, and awaken your soul. We'll be back with more from Alyson Charles after the break.
OMTimes TV. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. OMTimes Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, OMTimes offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an OMTimes magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on OMTimes TV and broadcasting it across the extensive OMTimes radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. OMTimes. Open yourself to the possibilities.
If I could be you, and you could be me for just 1 hour. If we could find a way to get inside each other's minds. Walk a mile in my shoes. Walk a mile in my shoes. Well, before you abuse, criticize, and accuse, walk a mile in my shoes.
Welcome back. Alyson Charles, you said that you've had spiritual teachers both of and beyond this world. Tell us about some of the teachers from beyond this world.
Oh, goodness. Oh, my Lord. There's so many that I have worked with. And I'm so grateful. I mean, everyone's path is unique and perfect for them. But for me personally, it just provides such an incredibly powerful breath, even as I'm thinking about it. I'm so grateful for how my path was divinely designed. You know, right out of the gate, when I had my spiritual awakening, I was taken directly into working with and connecting with Great Mother Earth and also Great Spirit. And that's actually where the medicine name that was given to me from Spirit, Rock, Star, Shaman, comes from. And I always like to speak to that because that medicine name carries with it some big, bold medicine. And oftentimes, people don't realize where the name comes from. And it directly speaks to my two main teachers, and that is Great Mother Earth, Rock, and Great Spirit, Star. And so my entire path, I have lived in total devotion, trust, and surrender to this vertical line. And even before I sat in this chair and got on the mic with you, I once again, I got out my rattle and some incense and just cleared the space and connected into Great Mother Earth, the divine wisdom, love, light, and power and truth that is me and lives within me. So that's my heart, my soul, and into Great Spirit, the center point where source consciousness and God, Goddess are. And I let myself surrender into that vertical line and be guided from those energetics and from that place and from there. And once I'm connected into that vertical line, I trust that whatever medicine, messages, and guidance and transmissions that flow through me are exactly perfect and exactly what's meant to be shared. I might get done with this interview and be like, oh, it's so surprising that we didn't talk about A and B. And it's so surprising that we mainly focused on X, Y, and Z. But at the end of the day, I completely trust because I live in complete surrender devotion to those places. Of course, we know the power animal guides have been huge. I've worked with so many different goddesses, primarily goddess Isis. I worked with her for so many years. I'm very much connected, as many of us are, to ancient Egyptian energies and guides from there. Ascended Master Jesus is my main love and light guide this lifetime. I don't really come from a religious background. As I shared, my childhood was very much only focused on athletics and me being a runner. So that became pretty
Your
much
religion.
yeah, my religion, truly. Exactly. So I know Jesus as Ascended Master Jesus, and he came in about the same time that the power animals came in, to be honest. And working with him, I typically, anytime I bring him up, I waited a little bit, because usually anytime I say his name, I just start crying, because he has just been such a steadfast anchoring support on my path. Doing this work, I wouldn't change it. And it is truly my greatest sacred, reverent honor to be trusted with, these teachings, and to be called to co-create this book with the animals. But, walking the shamanic path, anyone who's doing it knows it's not easy, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's truly the hero's journey. And also, you add on to that, my calling involves me doing this work very publicly. It's my, the way my teachings are meant to be shared is in the exact way that you and I are doing it right now. It's through media, and it's through the masses, and it's to the mainstream. And so that's brought with it its own unique challenges at times. And I can't tell you how many times I have journeyed and connected with and called in Jesus to just allow me to keep holding the line forward and living in that totally trust-filled, devoted space. I feel like there's a couple more. Lately, it's interesting. I can't speak to them too fully, but they just flashed in, so I do want to honor them. There's a lot of Asian deities, a lot of new guides that have been coming into me, into work with me recently. And so I have yet to really develop the rapport and the relationship with them, but that's just been a newer aspect of the guides in the unseen realms that are presenting that I'm really excited about, because those guides seem to be all very new to me, and are bringing in some new textures and essences. And I feel like there's someone else oh, okay, right. I don't speak to it very often. Um, but I do connect very much to what I guess many people would label as aliens. And I've had a lot of experiences being on motherships and being in crystal cities and other dimensions, and getting activations and transmissions from particular alien races. And yeah, it actually feels pretty freeing and liberating to just speak it. And it's interesting, when you talk about archangels and goddesses and power animals, I think sometimes people who are newer to the spiritual path and work, it's a little easier perhaps for them to hear about those potential guides. But there seems to be a different charge and reaction when you start to you've been on motherships. But it's been a whole range for me.
Yeah, it's interesting because you lead global courses and events, and your talks, and you've worked with brands like HBO and New York Times. You've led over 10,000 people, 15,000 people in a shamanic journey. When you are doing these corporate events, are you having to really change the languaging quite a bit, or are you finding that they are far more open than they were maybe a decade or two ago?
Oh, goodness. I'm enjoying this time with you. You are definitely a seasoned pro and asking some really beautiful questions. Yeah, thank you for this moment of me being able to experience flashing back to those really potent times. Yeah, I lived in New York City for about 15 years, and then I was also bi-coastal, going in between there and LA for many years. Now I'm in Texas, but especially in all that time in New York City, the primary way I was being instructed and guided to help people reconnect and remember, because that's really all I'm doing, is just helping people all of a sudden remember they're filled with this ancient wisdom too. Yes, I was getting linked in totally organically to partnering with all of these huge hotels in Brooklyn and in Manhattan, and guiding, monthly rooftop shamanic and full moon, journeys and activations. And yeah, this story that I'm about to share is will speak right to your question. When I was invited to go on stage for the HBO Film Festival, which happens yearly in Bryant Park in the middle of Manhattan, I was invited to go on stage before they showed the movie and share a shamanic journey. And it was a crowd of more than 10,000 in the park that day. And what I do for each invitation that I get in, whether it's for me to give a talk, do a journey, guide a ceremony, I always connect in the same way I did before this interview, and I surrender and I ask, is this your guidance for me? Is this a yes or no? I don't make the decision from my head. I make it from guidance from Great Spirit, my soul, and Great Mother Earth. And it was a clear yes that I say, that I do this HBO Film Festival shamanic journey. So I said yes. I tuned in to what type of shamanic journey I should facilitate. And I believe for that one, I typically journey people down through the tree and down through the tree roots and into a jungle environment. But I remember for that one, it was more of an upward journey and taking them into a crystal dome. And once in this crystal dome, calling in the power animal guide who most wanted to present for them that day. And no, I don't really sugarcoat things or adjust things. I stay in my divine power. I stay in whatever is flowing through me. And there's really no shifting. So I was up there on stage with my shamanic drum, with my shamanic rattle in the ceremonial clothes that I was guided to wear that day. And I'm up there on a mic on a stage in Bryant Park in front of more than 10,000 people, rattling and doing a full on true shamanic journey that I would guide for a smaller group in the woods or, in the jungles. And I have to tell you, the crowd was incredibly receptive. I wasn't sure, there's that many people, there's a lot of distractions. You're in the heart of a vortex of New York City, but they were incredibly receptive. And it wasn't until I got done that the man who hired me to guide that journey that day came over to me and said, I didn't want to tell you this until you got done, but in the 25-year history, the 25-year history of the HBO Film Festival, you are the very first person we had ever brought up on stage. I guess in all the 25-year history, the people would just show up to the park and the movie would play and that would be that. So not only, did they get guided in this true shamanic medicinal journey, but I was the first person they had ever, changed this film festival format with. And I was so glad that he didn't tell me until afterwards, because it wasn't until about 2 weeks after I did that experience that it really hit me how vulnerable of a place that I am in when I put myself in a position to bring these ancient teachings to audiences that it might be new for. And it wasn't until 2 weeks later that I thought, oh my Lord, you could have been on that stage and gotten booed by 10,000 people who were feeling resistance or triggered or confused as to, they showed up to watch a movie and there's some woman with a rattle on stage taking me into a crystal dome. And I thought, wow, Alyson, thank God I live in that full trusted place and I was instructed to do it. But yeah, it's been a very intriguing ride bringing these ancient teachings and remembrance energetics into places where they haven't been for quite some time.
Well, power animals, shamanism, there seems to be a great resurgence, a much needed one, and acceptance. Forbes called you one of the reasons practical magic is the new frontier of mindfulness. For Forbes to be talking about practical magic, in such a way, that's progress.
It is. So much is coming in when you just said that. Let me tune in to what wants to be spoken. Where it's taking me to is just the beauty of how we're all uniquely encoded, all humans, but then specifically every single shaman walking this planet, we're here with a different divine blueprint and we're here with a different divine mission. And there are many shamans, a lot of my shamanic teacher friends who are not given the instruction and the calling to use the title of shaman, and they are not being given the instruction to share about shamanism through media or through interviews. They might work more directly one-on-one, specifically one-on-one healings, and the client comes to their home, and it's an entirely different way of helping people reconnect and remember. But for me, it made total sense when I had my awakening and I started to understand and get reconnected to my true calling and why I'm here. I thought, oh my gosh, because I was shown these visions right out of the gate and they were very rattling. And I had to be very frank and honest and transparent. A lot of breakdowns along the way initially, because the first vision I was shown, I was given the medicine name Rockstar Shaman. And I thought, you got to be kidding me. That's a very bold, strong name. And I did a shamanic journey to call in Jesus to make sure that this was not from ego, that this was a divine instruction. And I continue to check in on that medicine name on a very regular basis because it carries a lot of medicine with it. But I also was shown. Oh my goodness, before my awakening, I was a radio host. Before my awakening, I was a television host. Before my awakening, I worked in television production. So it was just beautiful to be able to look back in hindsight and be able to see how all these dots were weaving and connecting to get me ready to take on this really robust and courage inducing mission for me to go into these mainstream magazines, Marie Claire, Elle, all these different places where I have been able to speak about shamanism. It's all by divine design, and it's what I need to honor because it's how I'm instructed to share it.
There are a lot of myths and misconceptions about shamanism, and while it's becoming more popular and we see them in movies, we've seen documentaries, you have said that we need to bust some of the myths. So tell me about some of those myths that need busting.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. It's so intriguing. This trajectory of our conversation is so fun for me, how it's all lining up and going together. The irony that I am also someone who used to be a television producer. And so I very much understand the mindset that producers get into in order to make a quote unquote successful television series or documentary. And, it is a bit of a shame that we've just gotten so in this way, especially over here in the US and maybe worldwide, where in order for media or shows to keep our attention, producers oftentimes are under the perspective that it has to be this sensationalized, exaggerated portrayal of scenes and relationships. And I do get pretty darn aggravated. I'll never forget when I was on a cross-country flight and I was so excited to watch it. It was a movie about witches and it was starring Anne Hathaway. And I was like, oh, great. I love witch energy. I've got a lot of it in me myself, many past lives as a witch. And of course, gosh darn it, it was another witch movie portraying witches that, when they took off their gloves, they had I can't even remember. I think bloodied nubs as fingers. And when they took off their wigs, bloodied scalps and no hair. And, really these evil, dark creatures. And, thank you for giving me just a couple minutes to just kind of rant. I'm so over when it comes to the media showing witches and spiritual teachers and shamans, that it's always coming from you need to be fearful or this darker, dark energy, dark magic place, because it's just not the truth. So that's definitely one of the myths. It's in it, and it hurts my heart too, because I'm here to share about shamanism through media, and I just wish media could catch up a little bit more and get to a place where it's more honoring of these sacred paths and more honoring of these sacred ways and teachings and traditions. Witches and shamans and mystics and medicine people, we have played a huge courage-filled role in transforming the energetics for good, for embodying greater unconditional love for this entire planet and for all of humanity and all living beings. And it's just not shown in that true way. So I'll try to end my rant there a little bit on that. But the other thing that people get there's a lot of confusion and misconception around is, who is shamanism for? And I'm really here to be a voice that shamanism is for all. To say that, shamanism is only for a certain type of person goes exactly against what shamanism is. Shamanism teaches us to connect into the oneness of all that is, the totality of the earth experience. And at the heart of it, we're learning in shamanism how to connect in with honor and get in right relation to the planet that we live on, and connect in with honor and get in right relation with the unseen realms, with Great Spirit. And that's for all living beings to have the honor and privilege to do. The really important piece, though, that's vital for me to speak to is there are also paths of paths of shamanism and ways of working with shamanic traditions that do adhere to specific cultural lineages. And anytime you're getting called into a specific culture or lineage, that's where it gets incredibly imperative that, because there's so many nuances there. Even if you are sitting in a ceremony with a specific earth-based lineage, and songs are being sung and things are being shared, that does not automatically equate to you then having permission to share the songs that were sung. And you need to always ask permission of the elder or of the facilitator or of the guide, of within what was shared in today's ceremony. What is able to be passed on? What do I have permission to weave into my personal practice? So that's where we have to be extra mindful. But to be able to enter into the shamanic path and shamanic teachings, everyone living on earth, all living beings and all beings in the unseen realms, we all have that invitation in, but it's very vital that we step into the path with honor, with sacredness, with reverence, and with deep respect.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Because the other thing that we hear a lot about these days is appropriation. Mm-hmm. People are taking on, the clothes, the language, the culture of a culture that they do not belong to. Now, where there's a fine line there. There's a very fine line, that one can walk. But I would think that many people attending shamanic events, have to especially walk that line.
Yes.
You cannot appropriate. You have to be invited and you have to have permission.
Absolutely. And there's also a huge distinction between your soul feeling a call to experience a shamanic way or experience a shamanic ritual. Perhaps there's a healing point within your physical body or your soul that knows that a shamanic tradition would provide for you. There's that way of experiencing shamanism. And then the whole other separate way is with someone like myself feels a complete, true shamanic soul level calling get activated within them, and you devote your entire life and your entire earth walk to being in alignment with the divine and being a divine embodied, integrity filled transmitter of shamanic teachings. So there's the soul level, I'm in living in complete devotion to the shamanic path. And then there's the, this is speaking to me. I think there's something in me attending this shamanic ceremony, attending it with sacredness and honor, leaving it, bowing in reverence and thanks, and asking questions and getting clarity on what can be shared moving forward.
You have a deck of cards that accompany the book, separate from, but accompanying same imagery, I understand. How does one use those cards? I mean, is this something that you would say, pull a card for the day? What energy do I need today?
Yes. Yes, exactly. So this is the card deck. As she said, it's not fully out yet. It's out August 16th. I'm very excited. I'm trying to get in here. We've got the jellyfish, and I'm so happy that Snail made it on, and my macaw friends, and our snake friend is on the top. And yes, it's a divination deck, and I really didn't want my deck to have constraints and specific hardcore rules, and that's fine for the decks that do. I have plenty of those decks and work with them too, but I wanted my teachings and the way that I walk the path, it's all about putting the self-empowerment back on the other person. And so, yes, you can open up the whole deck and place the deck on your heart center and ask the animal who wants to support you that day to come forward. I typically knock 3 times on the deck, and then you can just shuffle through or fan the cards. Use your left hand to tune into what card wants to reveal to you that day. But it's a divination tool where you learn how to trust yourself, learn how to trust your own intuition, learn how to trust if you want to pull 1 card, 5 cards, 10 cards, if you want to carry one with you, if you want them at your altar. Tune into yourself to know how to work with the deck.
What does it mean to be an embodied shaman?
Truly walking the talk, really doing constant integrity checks along the way and asking yourself over and over, the things that I'm sharing about, the things that I'm teaching about, the things that I'm leading and I'm guiding, am I living that? Am I a living embodiment of the things I'm instructing others to do? And I do those integrity checks relentlessly, as my husband would say, too exhaustively. But I'd honestly rather be on that end of the spectrum than to be a very disconnected, potentially harmful teacher that's not truly living the ways that I'm telling other people to live.
Alyson, we're almost out of time. I've got one last question for you. Since it came up in the conversation, if I were to open your book, what would I learn? What would benefit me from the tick?
Tuning into the tick. It's coming back in, to be honest. It's this theme, this ever-present theme of not being afraid of the bite, not being afraid of the initiation, not being afraid of the teachings that come in through shadow, the teachings that come in through the presentation of fear. And so I love that somehow we started that way. We got in the middle of our talk in that theme, and now we're closing the ceremonial chat in the same way. There must be something in that for you and I, and for everyone joining us today. And I know we're almost out of time, but I just want to tune in if there's any last message coming in with that theme for us. Wow. It was the message of the shadow is the way. And so there does seem to be this imperative call. I feel like we're almost at a breaking point where those who have been resisting the last couple of years, the things that they really need to face to truly let their life change, we're kind of at this impasse, this threshold breaking point. So I would invite, if you can muster up the courage and if it resonates, I do have a free guided shamanic journey on my website on the Animal Power book page that you can use to do this work. But I would invite you more than ever to focus on doing shadow work and to facing the aspects of yourself that you've been previously too embarrassed, shameful, or scared to face. You're at that impasse where if you don't do it, things might get more tumultuous than needed. And you don't have to have a divine intervention to step into your true calling like I did.
Thank you. We're going to have to leave it there, Alyson. We're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us today. Animal Power, 100 Animals to Energize Your Life and Awaken Your Soul by Alyson Charles is published by Chronicle Books, and you can find more information about Alyson, her books, cards, courses and events at alysoncharles.com, and that's Alyson with a Y. That's it for this week. I'll be back at the same time next week with another edition of What Is Going On. Till then, it's goodbye from me.